Hi guys! So recently the government announced some shocking news. Essentially on the 3rd of July, the government actually announced revisions to the current seller stamp duty rules. So in summary, what happened was that they actually revised it from a holding period of 3 to 4 years, and then of course the percentage in terms of the SSD rate from 12 to 16%. Essentially this video will be discussing some of the potential impacts. We'll be discussing first, what is this SSD about and the targets of it, and number 2, we'll be talking about its potential impact, and number 3 also, how this impacts you as a buyer and as a seller. So first, we'll be talking about what is SSD about. So as mentioned, basically the government wants to implement a system or rule to prevent speculation. Last time, people could actually buy a property and flip it 1 week or even 1 month later and reap from the 100 or 200k gain. That was probably a time where prices were more unstable and more speculative. This SSD, now at 16%, reduces speculation from buyers and also in turn helps to regulate the supply. It becomes a bit more predictable in that sense. So now when a buyer buys a property, the government knows that essentially they can only sell 3 or 4 years later. Number 2, we'll talk about the potential impacts of SSD. In terms of past history, I think first we talk about how it has impacted the market in terms of the price index in the history of SSD. Back in 2010, that's actually when the first time the government introduced SSD. Actually, this is nothing new in the market today. This was actually a reaction to 2009 to 2010, where there was actually a very big rebound in the property prices in Singapore. So the government introduced SSD in 2010 to also regulate the prices in that sense. What happened was that the market did increase after post-SSD implementation, but it did increase at a slower rate. It actually met the government's objective in that sense. It actually cooled the market slightly with the increase going up slower. But of course, in the end, the market was still increasing, probably at a rate where it was too high also from the government's standpoint. So what the government did back in 2011 is to basically increase the SSD from 3 years to 4 years, and also back to actually the current rule to 16%. It did moderate the market a little bit, but the market then again was still increasing. So I think what they did was they added an additional measure, which was the more drastic one. This was TDSR, or the total debt servicing ratio, back in 2013. So I think this was the real extreme measure because what we saw was there was actually a market winter in a sense from 2014 to 2017, where the market actually had a slight drop and prices were very stable throughout that period. So in 2017, I think enough was enough in a sense. So basically the market was very soft for that period. Buyers started to get used to the cooling measures. In 2017, they actually reverted the SSD from 4 years back to 3 years. I think from a consumer standpoint, they actually saw this as a signal that they could start to enter the market again. Back in 2017, there was a very huge en bloc frenzy. There were a lot of en blocs happening at that time, which increased a lot of the land prices. I think from 2017 to 2025, a lot of things have happened. Basically, the market went up due to the en bloc market. Of course, during COVID, the market surged up a lot. And actually, in between then, there have been a lot of cooling measures. So what happened now, back to this period, in 2025, the government has reverted back to 4 years and 16%. And I think we have to really see what the government's objective in this is all about. What we see overall is that this is not a very extreme measure. It's just a measure used to supplement other cooling measures. It does not really have a direct measure on prices so much. So how we actually also take a look at it is present day, how this is affecting current sentiment. What we see is that, for developers, actually this month we have quite a few launches happening. We actually have Upper House as well as the Robertson Opus, the CCR launches. They are actually slated to launch for sale on the 19th of July. So post this SSD announcement, what we saw is that developers like Wing Tai and All Green, they suddenly announced that they're going to launch for preview on the 17th of July, essentially crashing the party. Basically, what they're trying to do is also get the buyers' attention for their own launches. I think we also have other launches in OCR also. So we also have Canberra Crescent Residence, and we also have Springleaf by Gokuland also launching very soon. Yeah, I think so essentially how the developers react is also a very big signal. Perhaps the developers are also seeing that this measure is a precursor to potentially more measures by the government, which is why they're actually rushing to launch. So this is actually good for buyers in a sense. It's good when developers are actually fighting for the buyers' attention.
What else is happening that is affecting the supply, demand and pricing, not just this measure? Firstly, we see interest rates are coming down. We have our 1-month SORA as low as 1.68% now, which indirectly boosts the demand of housing in general, because with lower interest rates, it lowers the cost of borrowing and makes borrowing cheaper, which indirectly increases the demand and hence pricing. And also, the government did measure that they could potentially be removing the 15 months wait out period for private home owners who are looking to right size to HDBs. I think because of the recent slowdown in the HDB market compared to a year or two ago, that's why the government are potentially coming out with this measure. So this could indirectly boost the demand and pricing of HDBs as well. And for those who are looking to upgrade from HDB to private, if they could potentially sell more easily at a higher price, then they could also likewise upgrade to private and hence boost the pricing of private housing as well. And another thing to take note of in terms of the supply, we have a total of close to 80,000 BTOs as well as private housing coming into the market. So this could boost the supply of both HDB and also private. Yes, demand and prices are likely continuing to grow, but at a controlled rate, and also with the influx of steady and healthy stream of supply to balance out. Combine this with the effects of the new tweaking of the seller stamp duty measure, I think what government wants to do essentially to control the supply and ensure that there are lesser supply of sub-sale units in the market at any one point in the near future. So how does this impact you as a seller? I think potentially it's good for sellers because you may face lesser competition from other sellers who are looking to flip in a shorter time period, and also sub-sale owners who now have a longer holding period. In fact, if you're looking to sell to buy something else for flip, and then this may actually hinder your flipping opportunity, and also some homeowners may put off their selling because now if you want to think about selling, they have to think about if let's say they want to buy and re-enter the market, they now have to hold for longer. As for buyer, this could potentially mean lesser supply for you to pick from in the market, and also reversely, you may likely have a higher chance of meeting more realistic and genuine sellers who are motivated to sell. So if you're buying to upgrade, you may potentially face lesser competition when selling, but you could also sell for a better price. But at the same time, you may buy at a more realistic pricing from sellers who are genuine. If you're looking to make a purchase or looking for upgrade, what this means is that you also potentially have to prepare more savings, because instead of being able to sell within 3 years with no SSD, now you have to hold for longer, up to 4 years or even longer, depending on how the market pans out in the next few years. Essentially, you have to ensure that you have enough savings to last you for at least 4 years. So our conclusion is that with the drop in interest rates, the new tweaking of seller stamp duty measure, as well as the influx of supply of housing coming up in the market, this could balance out the demand and supply and hence pricing in the long term. The government will continue to constantly monitor and also tweak the measures as and when they need to ensure a balanced and stable market.
And I think overall also we have to see where the real impact of this lies. In general, Singaporeans have very good holding power. So as a resale owner, maybe I own 1 or maybe I max 2 or 3 properties. That's for general Singaporeans. We're not in a panic to sell. Then we have to see, why are the developers also, as mentioned before, reacting like this? Perhaps they are the ones with more urgency to sell, especially if let's say they are faced with a project of having 600, 700 over units to offload, compared to a resale owner with only 1 or 2 units. So we have to see, in general, who this benefits and who has more fear in terms of if they do not sell. This actually concludes our video. If you do like our content, do remember to like and subscribe to our videos. See you for the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.